we have some more stuff to talk about, and this one is interesting. So have you noticed that there is a particular strategy that the right wing is trying to do right now? And it is a series of smear campaigns against the most well-known people on the left, or, you know, the Democratic Party. There's not a whole lot of them that are actually on the left. But I need to actually pull fan art, not from the fan art contest area, because we have actually received a ton of fan art that has nothing to do with the fan art contest now. So give me just a second to find where we left off. Most of these appear to be fan art contest submissions. So I think this is where we're at right now. And this one is from Gideon Wells, and it is me as the Wife Mothman, I guess. Suris the Moth, a callback to a throwaway line said 2 months ago. I feel like all the fan art that is ever made is a throwaway line I said months ago, and then I forget the line, and then we're here. So, as always, thank you very much for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and see what is going on, and we are going to figure that out through no other voice but the very talented 6th place swimmer, Riley Gaines. So Tim Walz points out that when Trump said he made more than $1 billion off of crypto last year, Tim Walz says that Trump is the most corrupt president in American history. Now, remember that Trump himself sold cryptocurrency. So he's not lying. Like, he literally president-made pump and dump shit. This is like Elon Musk inflating the cost of Doge by talking about it as much as he did and then selling all of his Dogecoin. And then Riley Gaines responded with, "You just pardoned an illegal who repeatedly sexually assaulted a 10-year-old. Now, we can do the entire spiel where we point out how human beings aren't legal statuses, so calling somebody an illegal is really stupid and insulting. It's like only referring to Riley Gaines as a bitch, even though it's entirely accurate. Actually, no, you can just do that. She's just a bitch. Anyway, not to mention, you benefited from billions of taxpayer dollars being spent fraudulently in your state." She's referring to the Somali daycare stuff, which is weird because the dollars being spent, like, I'm just curious, if the dollars were spent fraudulently, like they were funneled away from the state into people who didn't deserve it, then how did he benefit from those things? I think you just wanted to throw the Somali daycare fraud stuff at him, but you couldn't really figure out how you wanted to do that, which is a really funny and pathetic way to manage it. And then it said, "You are the most morally bankrupt, corrupt American politician possibly ever." Boy, howdy, Richard Nixon is rolling in his grave. Or, you know, in his fishball head thing from Futurama. Tal says, "And how many predators has the current administration pardoned, then gone off to offend again?" So I figure that there's 2 ways we can go about talking about this. One is the whataboutism approach, where we can point out how many of the January 6th people were detained and then pardoned and then previously or afterwards went on to diddle kids. I mean, we could talk about how Donald Trump is a diddler who also happened to rape a woman, and the Supreme Court even ruled that no, he does not get to skirt that. They're not even fucking hear the case. They're just like, yeah, no, this is not worth us hearing. The president's a rapist. That is just how it is. So I read through this and I thought, surely she's making this up. And then I saw this as AI generated fat Riley Gaines. I guess Riley's gains have been in poundage. And this person said that the board stated their decision was heavily influenced by a letter of support from the victim, who is now 31, widespread community support, and evidence of Vang's rehabilitation in the 2 decades since then. So I figured, okay, there's something to this. There's something to this. Let's go ahead and see what the most trustworthy outlet in the world, Fox News, is saying about it. Walz, Minnesota Board of Pardons, clears convicted illegal alien child sex offender facing deportation. Well, that is certainly an amount of words that you have written, Mr. Louis Cassiano. You're thinking it. I don't have to say it. Actually, we can move on from what I was about to say. Anyway, Minnesota officials, including Democratic Governor Tim Walz, last month pardoned an illegal immigrant who was previously convicted of sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl who was slated to be deported. Now, the reason why they're talking about this a month later is because a concerted campaign has been put together against anybody who is popular on the left, even broadly. Tim Walz is seen on the left of America. He's basically seen as this, like, dutiful old Dem grandpa who we'd be perfectly okay having as a vice president, largely. And that's a thing that is kind of shared between the left broadly and people who are actually like liberal Democrats. I usually don't hear a whole lot of bad stuff about Tim Walz. And, of course, the left very broadly and some liberal Democrats are very, very on board with things Zoran Mamdani has been saying. Now, what's the campaign that's being thrown against Mamdani? Well, the campaign that's being thrown against him has largely been one about him saying that people should keep their AC at about 78 so that the grid doesn't explode during a heat wave. They previously got angry at him for jumping in a pool. So, I mean, that's the level that we're dealing with here. But this is a little more than just making fun of a person for saying the exact same things that Governor Abbott wanted in Texas years ago. No, these things are a little different. This is something that sounds on its surface to actually be heinous. So, let's go ahead and see what's going on. Al says, no thank you, mine stays around 70. So, like, in my office, mine's 76, but I can understand if the options are the hospitals shut down or we collectively raise the temperature just a little bit in our houses. I think that that's reasonable. And if enough people do it, it accounts for the people who will not do it because there are people who have certain medical conditions that need to have the AC a lot colder than others and cannot handle anything even approaching the heat wave. So if a lot of people do it, it accounts for that. It helps with that. So, let's see what they're saying here. With the recommendation of the Minnesota Clemency Review Commission, the Minnesota Board of Pardons, led by Walz, State Attorney General Keith Ellison, and State Chief Justice Natalie Hudson, grant a pardon for Lao National Tovu Lang at its June 10th meeting, according to a letter informing Vang of the decision from Carly Stark, the Executive Director State, CRC. The pardon effectively gives Vang a clean slate. Said, being granted a pardon is a notable achievement and a reflection of the work you have done since your conviction, Stark wrote in the letter to Vang. Vang was convicted in 2006 of first-degree criminal sex conduct. Between 2022 and 2002 and 2006, he repeatedly sexually assaulted a girl who was well under the age of 12. So we can all agree, horrible fucking thing to do. Terrible fucking shit. Absolutely heinous as all hell. At one point, he offered her $10 to keep quiet about the abuse. Now, of course, he pleaded guilty to first-degree criminal sexual conduct, which was a plea deal that spared him from going to prison. Instead of going to prison and becoming institutionalized, he instead went on a very, very long probation and had to undergo rehabilitation. Now, whether you believe that that is the correct thing to do, certainly up for debate. But let's go ahead and see how effective the strategy was before we come to any conclusions. Now, Fox News has a quote from Lauren Biss saying, Governor Tim Walz to pardon an illegal alien convicted child rapist so he can remain in our country is disgusting. These are criminal illegal aliens he and his Minnesota sanctuary politicians are protecting. Biss noted that Vang lost his legal status following the conviction. So wait a minute, hold on. So he was a legal alien. Legally here. And then he did something to lose citizenship status and then got probation, which basically kept him landlocked in the United States because, well, when you see a little more about his case, you'll understand why. Fox News Digital reached out to Walz, the White House, and the Ramsey County's Attorney's Office, which prosecuted Vang for the assaults. When he was arrested on charges in 2005, Vang admitted to having sexual contact with a girl, but blamed cultural norms in Thailand, according to the complaint obtained by the New York Times. The CRC, which includes 9 members, voted to approve Mr. Vang's petition in April. 4 members voted in favor, 2 voted against, and 3 were absent, the Times reported. The board takes the commission's review into account, but retains the ultimate authority to grant or deny pardons. In his application, Vang cited years of rehabilitation and argued that he has taken full responsibility for his actions. Now, we're going to finish the Fox News article, but you're going to notice something. Vang entered the U.S. through California in 1994 and was granted legal status by the Clinton administration. The status was revoked upon his conviction. He was detained by federal authorities last year as part of the Trump administration's Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota. President Trump has repeatedly criticized Walz and Minnesota officials over sanctuary policies that protect illegal immigrants, even those convicted of violent crimes from federal authorities. DHS noted that the Review Commission has granted pardons to undocumented immigrants before. In May, the state pardoned Jay Vang, a Laotian citizen whose criminal history included convictions of robbery, armed robbery of a business, you just said robbery twice, and driving under the influence of liquor. You just described every politician in Florida. Okay, so that's where it ends. That's where the Fox News article ends. Now, if I told you that there was pertinent information that was omitted from this article, would you believe me? Because looking at the narrative that we see here, as Astral points out, yeah, it's very obvious how they're trying to paint this. So let's go ahead and see what we can find if we look at a different news source. Now, this is Times of India. Now, we can argue whether or not I should be using a news source that is not based in the United States to report on things going in the United States, but I want to show you. I want to show you what we have here. Just give me a second. Yellow Purple Soda says every time Fox News reports, it has to leave something else to fit their narrative. Tal says they don't care if somebody here's illegally or not. If their parents and their parents weren't born here, they don't belong here. Fox News is convenient. Okay, so let's read how this article reads from somebody else. Among immigrant scheduled for deportation following a conviction of child sexual abuse has been granted a full pardon by the Minnesota Board of Pardons. The controversial decision was criticized by the Department of Homeland Security and federal immigration officials who accuse state leadership of shielding a violent offender. The board included Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Minnesota Supreme Court Chief Justice Natalie Hudson, who voted to clear the criminal record of the 42-year-old Tulu Vang on June 10th. The decision blocked his removal from the country, which U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement confirmed was scheduled to take place a week later. Federal authorities reacted with anger at the decision. They claimed it was an attempt by Democratic leadership to subvert federal immigration enforcement. I mean, it's probably that, and that's actually a good thing. That's my argument. DHS Acting Assistant Secretary Lauren Biss condemned the decision. We already read that part. Federal officials noted that Vang's deportation had recently become viable due to a 2025 shift in diplomatic relations with Laos, which agreed to accept deportees after nearly 2 decades of refusal. That's an interesting bit of information. So the reason the illegal immigrant was stuck in the United States for 2 decades is because the country that we would have deported him to would not accept any refugees from the country. That's kind of fucking obvious at this point, isn't it? Like, of course, you're not going to be able to get the guy. Like, your options at that point are throw him in the sea or kill him, which are basically the same thing. And that's not, we don't have a policy of we can't deport you, so we just fucking shoot you. So we still had him. Fair enough. ICE detained detailed the severity of Vang's record in the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, noting that the board chose to grant Tulu Vang of Laos a pardon for his 2006 convictions for sexual assault, strong-arm sodomy, and procuring child for prostitution. Again, we can all agree, every one of those, fucking heinous act. Can we also agree that the point of prison, the point of law enforcement, is to prevent crimes from happening? Now, that's not what fucking happens in the United States. We all know that. But the point of law enforcement is to try to prevent crimes and try to lower harm in an ideal world. The point of prison is supposed to be to reform somebody. You take somebody who is dangerous in society, you move them outside of society, and you give them a structure where they are supposed to learn how to become a person who is actually able to benefit society when they leave. Once again, we know that that's not what fucking happens in the United States, but we can at least agree that's the ideal, right? If the ideal is making sure that somebody does not engage in heinous acts anymore and becomes a productive member of society and actually makes up for their actions, that would be considered good, right? That's objectively an improvement. Vang arrived in the United States from a Thai refugee camp in 1994 and was granted legal status under the Clinton administration. We know that that was revoked following his arrest. According to police reports cited by DHS, Vang attempted to offer the child $10 to buy her silence. Again, heinous as shit. We already read through all this. Now, Vang's successful pardon application relied heavily on claims of total rehabilitation since completing his probation in 2019. In his letter to the board, Vang argued that he was a changed man who had worked as a cashier and a machine operator to support his 6 children. He said, "My past actions, though deeply regrettable, do not reflect the man I am today. Since my conviction, I have committed myself to living an honest, responsible, and community-focused life. I've worked tirelessly to rebuild the trust of my family, friends, and community." He added that the shame and regret that I carry, especially as my children have grown older and learned about my past, runs deep. If it were possible to undo what happened, I would do so without hesitation. But I cannot change the past. What I can do is ask, with the utmost sincerity, for a second chance. Vang also described his dilemma, noting that he was born in the Ban Vanai refugee camp in Thailand and has no citizenship in Laos. He also has no family in Laos, no ties left in Laos. He has nothing there. There's nothing there. There's nowhere for him to go. Here, he has an established life, and he seems to be giving back to his community. There, he would just be a blip on the radar and die. Now, while Republican lawmakers like House Majority Whip Tom Emmer blasted Walz for putting violent illegal aliens ahead of innocent Americans, again, his record does not seem to show that he is still that. The governor's office pointed to an unexpected source of advocacy. Oh, that's interesting. Something seems to be missing from the Fox News article that is actually there in another article. That's so weird. I wonder what it could be. When pressed for comment, Walz's representatives directed reporters to a letter from Vang's 12-year-old victim, who is now a 31-year-old adult. Supporters from the local Hmong community and Vang clan leaders also vouched for him, calling him a great model to us, despite his past crimes. DHS remains unconvinced, pointing out that the Minnesota leadership has a history of similar actions, including a recent pardon of another Laotian national with a record of armed robbery. So do you notice the part that was missing in the other article? You see the part that just wasn't there? Let me know in the comment section below, but I'm going to go ahead and say one of the main ones, the one that struck out to me more than anything, was the fact that the victim themselves argued in favor of him staying in the United States. The victim herself, or themselves, the victim themselves said, no, he's a changed person. The victim themselves came forward and said, no, I do not want this person gone. If the person who was actually wronged is the person who is saying, no, I want him to stay, and the person is an adult of sound mind and consideration, I'm gonna be honest, that's good enough for me. Like, almost, there's very few crimes where I can think where the victim themselves can be 20 years removed from the incident and then argue that they don't want anything to happen to somebody and be not, like, take that into at least consideration, right? I wonder if we could find the letter, because I want to see the exact words that were said there. Minnesota officials face backlash. We've got that there. Are you gonna show the letter, or is it just not something that they're going to use? Said hence why Fox hates to mention it. Further, the victim's a person of color. I don't know any information about the victim as of right now. Explain the pardon from the governor. How do you explain this to children? yes, hello, children. If somebody harms you, we are supposed to reprimand them and try to reform them into somebody that will not harm children in the future. We have an example of us doing that, reprimanding somebody and shaping them into somebody who would not harm children in the future. You explain it to children by giving them the details of what happened. Somebody actually has a quote of the actual thing that was said. Cool. Bonbon. Hello, Bonbon. How is it going, Bonbon? Hopefully your day is going okay. Also, for anybody who doesn't know, Bonbonberry is actually the one who designed this outfit right here that I am wearing right now. They are the ones responsible for the original design that was used in 3D that got adapted into 2D when Suzu Sawara took over this one. So, give a congratulations to him. Okay, anyway. Now let's go ahead and continue, because we got stuff to talk about. This is apparently the victim's statement. What happened to me was wrong, but I've had many years to think about this. I've made peace with it. I forgive him. That was a long time ago. It was over 20 years ago. He's not the same person now. I've seen how he's changed. I believe he's sorry for what he did. I want his family to stay together here. His children need their father. He and his wife have built a life. I believe that he has learned and grown since the abuse and that his family has suffered enough. Please grant this pardon. That is my wish. So, let's see how people have responded to that on Facebook. She can't know his heart. Recidivism in pedophiles is massive. How is she going to feel if he harms another young girl? I've seen pedophiles hoodwink the majority of people who know them. Cool. However, we have seen 20 years of information that shows that he's not doing that. And we have information from the victim that she also has seen that this is a different person now than they were before. So, like, y'all can wax lyrical about all this. Also, this Sarah Weeks person just going, after somebody says he was on supervised probation, the chances are very slim, and her going, I've seen it happen. Congratulations. I've also seen somebody pass around a gun at a fucking park in front of a bunch of kids. Doesn't mean it happens every time. Robbie says they do realize he's been out on parole the whole time, right? Taryn says, I mean, that letter's about as cut and dry as you can get. If she believes that he has changed, he's probably changed. Also, the question is, if you do something horrible, should you be branded for life or should you be given the opportunity to improve and change? Because I'm going to be honest, I think you should be given the opportunity to improve and change. Now, that does not mean that the people around you, your family, your victims, your previous friends, that does not mean that they owe it to you to be in your company anymore, but you should be given the opportunity to change, improve, and start anew. And sometimes we get a very clean-cut example of that. Now, the reason I go through all this is we're seeing with Mamdani that the plan is to attack him because of a statement he made that basically said, hey, we want the hospitals to still function. Could you crank your stuff up by like a degree or two, please? That's it. That's what they're attacking him for. And with Tim Walz, on the surface, this sounds like a fucking heinous thing, because it is. It's horrible. But the horrible thing isn't the pardon. The horrible thing is what happened back in 2022. We are 24 years removed from 2022. Reading here, you nor I can't guarantee everything, but he did serve his time, and he's been off probation since 2019 when he was removed from it. So he's been living in public. He wasn't even on the sexual offender registration for 7 years. I'm curious, if somebody's sentence for a crime they've committed is 5 years in prison, once they serve their 5 years, should we continue punishing them? No, that would be really fucking stupid. If somebody has served their time, then the punishment is over. We did it. We've given them the punishment. Little Firecat says, rehabilitation should be the goal, but not everybody can be rehabilitated. I truly hope this guy really has been rehabilitated. You're right. Some people are sociopaths. Some people are Nicholas Fuentes. There are some people who cannot be redeemed from their position. But this idea that we have that nobody can ever be redeemed, nobody can ever improve as a person, is just antithetical to everything that we should be engaging in law enforcement for. Law enforcement is not there to protect victims, it's there to protect capital. But in a solid and just world, law enforcement should be there to protect victims and rehabilitate offenders, reintegrate them into society so that they can operate as better, healthier people that will no longer harm people. If instead we run under the asinine assumption that we should be able to forever and never-endingly hold people just in perfect cylindrical sequential punishment. They get to run around like a hamster in a wheel, never, ever getting a chance to become a better person. Then guess what? Eventually, people are going to get to the part where they say, okay, fuck it, I'm just going to be the monster that you think I am. Because, like, what is the point? What is the point of having an amount of time that we punish a person for, if not to stop the punishment when the time has been served? Otherwise, the actual amount of time that we put on any punishment at all is actually just a fucking lie. Said, but Suris, is he a Republican? Only Republicans can be reformed almost instantly and without punishment. In fact, at least that's what the Republicans I know believe. And yeah, we can do the whataboutism thing where we point out the child diddlers that have actually been, pardoned by Trump that did January 6th shit, who are pardoned because of the January 6th shit and then went to go diddle kids. Like, we can do that, we can talk about that, but that's not a very powerful argument. Whataboutism is a fallacy. You know what's not a fallacy? Having actual evidence that a person has changed. And I could have my foot into my mouth. I could. We could wake up tomorrow and find out that this guy has actually assaulted 15 kids. And it's horrible and terrible and the worst thing in the world. That could happen. But until it does, I'm going to hold out hope. Because right now, Fox News doesn't give a shit about whether or not he's reformed. Fox News, and the Republican Party in general, all they care about is that this is a person who harmed a kid, and we can call them an illegal alien, and we can say that Tim Walz pardoned them, and that makes him an evil demon. As evidenced by this. Note, when Riley Gaines says stuff on social media, assume it's been bought and paid for. Because she has been, since the trans swimming incident, she has 100% been bought and paid for by conservative outlets that think that she is one of the best arguments and one of the best tokens they can spend against progressivism. It's worked so far, right? So we could also wake up tomorrow and find the Republicans in Congress and the White House assaulting children on the White House lawn. Yep, we could. Any hypothetical is possible. Also, just one more thing, real quick. You know how I know that this has nothing to do with actually protecting children? You know how I know that this has nothing to do with actually trying to have a principled stance and has everything to do with slinging the mud at somebody who looks blue and has the letter D in front of their name? The Republicans didn't do fucking shit as an apparatus against Donald Trump, known sex offender. And we have no evidence that man has changed. If the Republican Party actually gave a flying fuck about any of this, we would have seen an impeachment in the House, and we would have seen a conviction in the Senate as soon as enough of the Epstein files were released, such that we found that Donald Trump's name was in there more often than Jesus's name is in the fucking Bible. But that hasn't happened, so they do not care. Because if they cared as an apparatus, as a unit, as a political body, that is the evidence we would see. We don't see that evidence. Rules for me do not apply. Rules for thee always apply. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. As for me, I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of the smear campaign shit. But it's the only thing that they seem to know how to do. They can't win on public policy. They have to win on, look, what an evil Democrat. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.